name's Melissa Terrace. I'm one of the other board members for the Reed Co-op, and I have to say how I'm so excited. I'm coming up here and I'm so excited hearing all this. It's been such a long journey over the past 9 years for this project. And I cannot tell you, I've been working in digital humanities for, 25 years now, how rare it is to make a piece of software that people actually want to use. So here we are at the third user conference, which is growing every year. We're selling out faster and faster. We now have these 32,000 users, and it's been such a delight to be part of this project. I'm just but a small cog in a large machine, and I'm very appreciative of getting the chance to play along and to get to meet more of you later. So do come up and talk to us afterwards if you see me or Andy or Gunther around, and tell us what you're up to. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to actually hearing some things about projects that are using Transkribus. I don't know if people have preloaded their yeah, okay, it's all preloaded, good. So without further ado, because we are running a bit late, we're going to have a series of 10-minute presentations, and I'll keep people to time, and we'll have 2 minutes of questions afterwards. And so I would like to invite Gerhard Rampl and Andrea Mussmann from the University of Innsbruck to talk about 120 years of Alpine mountaineering.
Well, thank you very much to the organizers for inviting us to the Transkribus User Conference. It's huge, as we see. We have a long-standing and I think very satisfying collaboration with the Transkribus team. I hope it's mutual. And I looked it just up. My first number of a collection was 232. So we are in the 5 digits now, in the middle high 5 digits now. So I really like to congratulate you on what you've done, all of you who have been a part of this success story. So as you see, we are from the linguistics department of the University of Innsbruck. That's Andrea Mussmann. My name is Gerhard Rampl. And we'd like to talk about our topic of interest, and that is the Journal of the Austrian Alpine Club. The Journal, the Austrian Alpine Club, was actually founded in the 1860s, and it is the second oldest Alpine club in the world after the British Alpine Club. So they immediately began to edit a journal on a yearly basis, and actually it was kind of an almanac, so where they collected articles on every topic that was somehow related to alpinism or mountaineering. So might it be first ascents, or might it be a description of mountains, description of new mountain ranges, and stuff like that. Even alpine literature you can find there. So we have actually extended it a little bit more in the meantime, so we are actually covering 140 years now. This was just in the last weeks, and we have 136 volumes of the journal digitized now. The one of the war years are missing. There's no journal there. We're talking about approximately 50,000 pages, which is not much from some of you, but for us it is quite an amount of pages. And we have one special problem, that is between 1915 and 1961 we have Gothic script. I will get to that in the next slide. What we are interested in as linguists is to get a corpus. A corpus is always some kind of collection of texts, and we have here 20 million tokens. That means 20 million of words. You can transfer that a little bit like that. So first about Gothic script. Well, we had used the Abbey image server at first because we didn't have the HDR models. So we had used the image server before. I think number 11 was it, and we were recognizing the text, and it was good, but it was not really satisfying for us, and we always looked for possibilities to improve the OCR quality. But as you know, the image server isn't, or the Abbey server is not trainable, not in a real way, so this was difficult for us. And when the HDR Plus models came, this was really a game changer because we used it together with the pre-trained models. So we used basically a pre-trained model from the Austrian National Library, the ONB News Eye model that is publicly available for you, for all of you, and that is quite working well out of the box. But we had some special problems. That means we didn't have just Gothic fonts, we had a lot of texts that were mixed Gothic and Antiqua. This is especially the case if you have a mentioning of historical excerpts, or for example, if there's something about botany, you have the flower names always written in Antiqua and cursive. So this was quite a problem, and we had to use some training for that, and we used the possibility of transfer training, and with only 89 pages of ground truth and another 12 pages of validation, we got really fantastic results. So we're in the same range as Andy told us right now. 2% error rate is a lot that we have, because most of our texts are in a lower error rate range. So this has been one fantastic improvement. So if we're talking about the corpus again, so we're interested in the texts actually, so not so much in the readable texts alone, but we're also interested in texts. And as you know, the Alpine Club, or the alpinism in general, plays an important role for Austria itself. We are a country in the mountains. Tirol is called Land im Gebirge, land in the mountains, country in the mountains. So it is very important for us, for the research here in the area. We have a research focus, Alpine space, man and environment here at the University of Innsbruck. So this is a topic that affects us very much. And we are using the journal actually to make linguistic research on that. Mostly we use it for place names, but also, for example, for questions like how is gender represented in these texts. But we also use it for strict linguistic queries, as something like that. That means we have a timeline from the 80s, 70s to 2000, and we can look up, okay, how is the suffix words, German Werts, developing in that time? And you see it has a quite, for us linguists, a quite exciting development. We have a steep decline at the last decades now, so this is a very nice thing to do. But first, we have to get the texts from Transkribus in our corpus query tools, and we are using the corpus workbench. Might be familiar to some of you, and the corpus workbench uses a very special format that is necessary for importing. So we designed kind of a pipeline. My colleague will take on that a little bit deeper later on, but I will just tell you something about the first part. One of the problems we had is the export here, the first export here of the Transkribus output is a flat export, so we have the whole of the text in there. But we are interested in the articles of the text, not just the text as a whole, but in the articles. So with the help of the Transkribus team, we actually used the structure that we can assign here in the Transkribus, so we can make the tags here. We used the structure to make from flat XML format, hierarchical XML format, so that basically every essay title serves as a marker where we get a deeper structure, and there we can separate the articles from the whole text. So this is very necessary for us for making our texts available, and you see we make ample usage of the structural marking. We have here the essay titles, we have the authors, we have the paragraphs, and so on. And for our linguistic research, only the paragraphs are interesting, and so this is a convenient way to make that available. So for the rest, I think, yeah.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at the pipeline from the programming perspective. So we want to create input files for the CQB web, so for our corpus linguistic workbench, annotated, linguistically annotated, and verticalized. As an input, we have the Transkribus METS files and page files, which we then use XSL transformations to create XML files, one per volume of the Alpine Journal Club. You see here the structure that we just saw that we extract from Transkribus is preserved in this XML document. Each text tag delimits an article, and each div tag delimits the paragraph. This is the input to the linguistic part of the pipeline. First, we tokenize the text in the div tags using the Somayo tokenizer, and we split the text into sentences and the sentences into words and give the words IDs. This is an important part for our next step, the named entity recognition, where we need the word IDs to identify the named entities for the part-of-speech tagging step. For named entity recognition, we use a rule-based string matching named entity recognition kindly provided to us by the Swiss research group around Noah Bubenhofer and Martin Volker, and machine learning. This is the part-of-speech tagged penultimate file that we have in our pipeline. You see here that we add the named entity recognition tag in addition to our part-of-speech tags to keep information about the part-of-speech tags intact, especially in multi-word named entities, which is an interesting information for linguistic research. Finally, we use regex to transform this XML document into the VRT format that the CQB workbench needs to process the documents. And finally, here we have an example of the CQB workbench looking for named entities. The named entities that are marked in blue are the named entities that are recognized by both named entity recognition techniques. The ones that are written in blue but not highlighted are the ones that only the machine learning techniques could detect. And there you can see cases like Landau, which of course should be London, something that is probably an OCR error. Is not something that a string matching rule-based named entity recognition algorithm can detect, but our machine learning algorithm can. Semgrunde, on the other hand, is a German inflection issue. So here we have a archaic dative, which is also something that the rule-based named entity recognition is not able to detect, but the machine learning technique can. So that's for our linguistically annotated corpus using Transkribus and a pipeline. Thank you, and questions?
Have we got any questions? Yes, down
Yeah, I'm wondering, can you tell us a little bit more about training the layout? It seems like you have very refined segmentation for film and decrease of damage management.
Yeah, so in this case, we didn't use much of training because the basic structure recognition was done way before Transkribus existed. So we used the predecessor, the functional extension parser, so we have really a long-standing collaboration, you know. So we used the functional extension parser, and we had a project by marking that manually. The big advantage now is we have other texts in this that are very similar to that, and so now we can train the new models. But I can tell you definite experiences with that because we're just on the way of getting knowledge about that, you know. But we have a good ground truth from that times that was not possible, you know. Okay.
Time for one more question.
Hi. You said that you make a single page document for the entire volume, a bunch of pages. I was just wondering how you deal with paragraphs that are split across pages and, for example, even words that are broken at the end of a page continued in another. And typically it may not be even just a paragraph that continues from one page to another. This page could have a footnote, and the next page could have a page header and page number and so on.
Thank you very much for the question. That's a very interesting one, and that's exactly the reason why we have this ample structural marking, because we don't use we only use the paragraphs. So we're only interested in complete sentences and in complete words and stuff like that. So we just make usage of the paragraphs. So we completely skip out the footnotes. We could use the footnotes on their own as a linguistic topic for interest, but here in this case we just use the paragraphs. And in this step, actually, so when we're here from the page XML to the input XML, in this step in the input XML, we're just letting some very simple regex run over the document and make some rule-based decisions if the hyphens should be resolved in one single word or not. Okay, you can do a lot with just looking is the next word, beginning with capitals is the next word, and we do this also across paragraphs. Okay, so we also take the paragraph border into that consideration, but this is basically rule-based and has excellent results. So because the recognition is so good, you can rely on the recognition, you know.
So as long as your paragraph recognition is correct,
exactly,
then everything follows from that. Then
exactly, yeah. That is the case.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks very much to Gerhard and Andrea for their talk. I'd now like to welcome Liesbeth Keijser from the National Archives of the Netherlands, who's going to talk about the use of Transkribus there.
Well, I'm Liesbeth Keijser from the National Archives of the Netherlands. I work at the Department of Digitization. In the Netherlands, we have a huge ambition for digitization. We want to digitize 10% of our state archives in 15 years. So that's enormous. And that's about, let's see, 30 meters of historical archives a week and 15 million pages a year. So that's enormous. We don't only digitize the archives that is in The Hague, the National Archives, but also from 10 other state provinces archives. They are spread around the country. But we noticed that just making scans doesn't satisfy our public. They expect that they can search through archives just like you can Google, just like you can do your shopping online. So just making scans is not sufficient. So a couple of years ago, we started our organization with more people working on making scans more accessible. We try to tag, for example, items in inventory numbers, dossiers, so that people can jump through the pages, not having to search every scan by scan. And one of the things that helps us at this moment a lot is Transkribus, because this gives us the opportunity to do full text search through this data set. Last year, in 2018, the Minister of Culture in the Netherlands asked us, do you have experience with handwritten text recognition? Because we think it's important to try to figure out what this can mean for the archives. So we had the possibility to start a project with quite a lot of budget, and it gives us the opportunity to process 2 million scans in Transkribus. And we have 2 years' time to do this. I thought it was quite some time, but I must say it's quite challenging to do all the work that we want to do. We're not only trying to do it with our own material, we are processing 1 million scans of archives from the East Indian Company. Indonesia is a former colony of the Netherlands, and we had a lot of clerks writing a lot of documents about the organization, about people going on boards on ships, about goods that were on the ships. So a lot of documents. I think it's 1.5 kilometers, something like that. Not only in the Netherlands, but also in the rest of the world, we also have a lot of those scans. So we wanted to add 1 more million scans from the 17th and 18th century to this project. And for the other state archives that we are working for with digitization, we have selected for them, or they have selected in the past, notarial deeds from the 19th century. And we asked them also to join this project with scans from this type of material from the 19th century. So it's quite diverse. The main partner in this is Noord-Holland Archief, because we are working with them quite a long time with handwritten text recognition. So we asked them to join with almost 500,000 scans, and the other archives joined for the other 500,000. So in total we have, let's say, 2 million scans from 10 different archives from 3 centuries. So that's quite a challenge. And it more or less gives you this diversity in handwriting. You also see printed material. I'm sometimes quite a bit, I see sometimes projects with just one handwriting. I think, well, that's simple. We have to deal with this kind of mess. When we started the project, my first aim was to have a good organization of people transcribing. We don't have those kind of people in our archive that have time to doing this, so it was quite a challenge to find good people. But we managed. We had a group of 6-7 people working on making transcriptions for half a year, or more than half a year. And they did a very good job. But first, let me tell you that we, of course, we gave the scans to read, Transkribus, and they made a selection of scans. And first they were processed with an HDR model that was, not so good, but it was a start. And then the transcriptions were corrected by Digitex, and they are the Vietnamese service provider of Transkribus. And they made the first correction in the layout analysis and also in the transcriptions. And I think for the 17th and 18th century material, this was quite okay, but we noticed that, especially on the 19th century material from notarial deeds, it was quite difficult for them to understand, because the text that has been used is quite specific, and the handwriting is very difficult. And so we thought it was more easy for us to do the transcriptions ourselves, because we noticed that this kind of language is quite specific, and they use a certain standard phrases, and we thought it was easier for us to recognize this and to transcribe this from scratch on. So first HDR, then the Digitex for some of the archives, and then our transcription team. And this together we produced about more than 7,000 pages of ground truth throughout the complete collection. And I think it's quite important that we used a standard transcription convention so that everybody did the same thing. Digitex did the same thing as all the transcribers. This is quite important. All the transcriptions, so all the ground truths, are available at Zenodo. So I think it's very important that you share as much as possible the ground truths and the models so that everybody can use them, can profit of it. So when you want ground truth on this kind of material, go to Zenodo. You can find it over there. So the next goal was to make a good model. we noticed that it's very important just to train different kind of models, especially when you have a diverse collection. We had the VOC, so the East Indian Company collection. We have the big notarial deeds from North Holland archives and also the other archives. So we figured out maybe just one a VOC model, or maybe add notarial deeds to the model. And then we thought, now maybe it's better to have the VOC model divided in the 17th and 18th century. Well, in the end, we ended up with 3 models for 3 data sets. So it was, well, in general, I think I can say that it's a specific model does not work always the best, not when you have a diverse collection. It was better to make a combination, to have more data. Well, you can see this, the character error rates on these sample sets. I think it's quite okay. This afternoon, my colleague will also go more into detail about the iceberg model, because this iceberg model is publicly available in Transkribus. And I think when you are working on Transkribus, this might help you for your own collection. Next step, because when you have all those transcriptions, it's just the beginning. You want to be able to show them, to search them. So we also started working on making a demonstrator for all those transcriptions. At this moment, the 3 parties are working on a prototype for a demonstrator. Unfortunately, those prototypes, I cannot show you anything because intellectual property rights. But in 1 week, they will be finished. And after this, we go to in a tender procedure to find one party to further develop a demonstrator, and this demonstrator will be will be open as much as possible and will be available next year. And more or less, this is the infrastructure that we're trying to create, because the infrastructure of the National Archives at this moment, the website is not ready yet. So we're making a temporary website that we can incorporate later on. One of the, well, I think the most basic components of those demonstrators is that, well, you should have a website, something like that, a search engine, a transcription management system, annotation server. And we want to use standards like W3C. Well, this was it, I think. I'm not sure if I have not missed anything, but still some questions possible? Okay.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
The big model the archive is working on, will it be available for us to use public in any time soon? I'm waiting for it since last year. So.
You mean the iceberg model?
For the 17th century.
Oh wait, we have a model for the combination of all the VOC material and the notarial deeds, and it's called the iceberg model, and this model is available in Transkribus, and it's a combination of 17th, 18th, and 19th century.
So it's already available?
It is available. I think it is, yeah. It should be. And when there are people that want maybe also to profit from the other models we have, I don't think the 17th century is very interesting because we have too little ground truth, but the combination of 17 and 18 might also be interesting for you, then contact us.
You have a very good share rate for your model, but have you tried to train a specific model for a specific environment and stare and look to the result? Because the percent is good, but maybe could be better with a specific model for a specific end.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was what I was trying to tell, that I'm very jealous at people that can concentrate on one handwriting. We don't have one handwriting. Well, we had a little side project. South Africa was also part of from a colony of Holland, and they have copied the VOC archives in the 19th century. So this is one handwriting, and together with Transkribus we made a model on this, and I think its character error rate was 2.3%. Yeah, so with one hand you can do this, but I showed you the picture. This is our situation. And I think when I see the result at this moment, I would like to be able to process all the scans that we digitize at this moment. And that means that we have thousands and thousands of handwritings, and then you have to have general models that do the work for this as well.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'd like now to invite up to the stage Suphan Kirmizialtin from the University of New York, who's going to be talking about Ottoman Turkish and the use of Transkribus.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here at the Transkribus conference in the lovely town of Innsbruck. My colleague David Risley and I are relatively new users of Transkribus. We have been experimenting with it for about a year now for 2 different projects, and both with very encouraging results. And today I am going to talk about our work for the automated transcription of Ottoman Turkish periodicals with the Transkribus platform. Ottoman Turkish is a peculiar language to work with because it involves the transcription of a right-to-left language, left-to-right script. And as you can imagine, things get complicated in the Transkribus platform when we try to make this work. So we are very happy about this chance to get the feedback from the community on how to make this possibly a more efficient process. But before proceeding into the details of how we made it work so far, I would like to give very brief information about the language itself. Ottoman Turkish was the official language of the Ottoman Empire, which ruled over most of the Middle East and Southeastern Europe for about 500 years. The language is obviously, it has a Turkish main framework with Turkish syntax and Turkish vocabulary, but it borrows very heavily from Arabic and Farsi in terms of both loan words but also grammatical structures, and it was written with the Arabic alphabet. Ottoman Turkish was outlawed actually by Atatürk in 1925 as part of his larger westernization reform, and it was replaced by a modified version of the Latin script. Today, any Turkish citizen who wants to access to their pre-1925 cultural heritage, they either need to get this specialized education in Ottoman Turkish, or they need to read the transcribed and edited versions of the original texts, if available, of course, at all. And naturally, all the historians of the Ottoman Empire learn how to read and transcribe this language as part of their formal training. And we believe that our work with the Transkribus platform might actually play a key role in opening up the Ottoman archive to a much broader audience, including the non-specialist portion of the Turkish population itself. And I think it will also be a boon to Ottomanists in general, because speaking from personal experience, we spent a sizable chunk of our research time transcribing this material to modern Turkish. And in addition to facilitating access to this material, we are also interested in creating computer-readable digital corpora for Ottoman Turkish, and in doing so, making some of the tools of digital humanities, such as text mining for named entities or topic modeling, available for Ottoman Turkish texts. As I mentioned, our work so far focuses on the Ottoman Turkish periodicals published between mid-19th and early 20th centuries, and luckily for us, the collection that holds these periodicals, the Hakkı Tarıkus collection, has already been fully digitized, thanks to a collaboration between Beyazıt Library and Tokyo University. And it is this online corpus of the HTU collection that we plan to eventually fully transcribe with the Transkribus platform. I would now like to briefly go over on how we made Transkribus work for Ottoman Turkish so far, some of the challenges we face, and how we plan to carry the project forward. To generate our the ground truth for our first HTR model, I used what I assumed to be a typical Ottoman periodical from the time, typical in the sense of typeface, page layout, and content. But the very first problem that we faced when creating the training data was deciding on a transcription scheme. Due to the peculiarities of the Arabic script, it is not possible to create a one-to-one consistent transcription of Ottoman Turkish in modern Turkish. This is a subject that will take several hours to explain in detail, but in a nutshell, I'm sure you are all very interested in hearing those details. In a nutshell, the problem is there is no one-to-one mapping between Ottoman Turkish and modern Turkish alphabets. In some cases, for example, here as the letter F, there is actually one-to-one mapping between the two letters. But in other cases, in letter kef and its counterparts in modern Turkish, and wow, and it's many counterparts in modern Turkish. So a lot of these letters are polyphonic. They correspond to more than one sound in modern Turkish. So creating a consistent one-to-one transcription is out of question for us, which inevitably introduces a certain degree of irregularity and inconsistency to our HDR model. Another problem that we face in this particular project is the image quality. Although we appreciate the work done to digitize the HDU collection, it is obvious that they've used lower-end photographic equipment because there is just too much noise in a lot of the images. And this is, of course, a problem for baseline detection and character recognition. So we expect this to be one of the main hurdles on our way to creating a general HDR model for this corpus. The third issue that we face, which is directly related to the structure and working of the Transkribus interface, is, of course, the conflict between the directions of our original material in Ottoman Turkish and their transcriptions in Latin in modern Turkish. Transkribus, of course, does support right-to-left languages, but it does not accommodate the linking of right-to-left text images to left-to-right. This is the reverse version anyway. It does not support connecting left-to-right text to right-to-left images. So here we had to get a bit creative and use a hack, if you will. And what we ended up doing was, as you can see here, reversing the direction of the Turkish transcription, modern Turkish transcription, from left to right to left, to make sure that the lines here match the image lines. I have been working with this reversed flip text for many months now, and it still looks funny and uncomfortable to my eyes, but computationally it works perfectly well. So we were very happy to observe that with only 60 pages of training data from this publication, our first HDR model created a character error rate of only 9.6%. And in the next stage, I manually corrected the transcription and added another 25 pages of training data. And at the moment, our character error rate for this publication stands at 4.3%, which I think is really great. So motivated by this result, I applied this improved HDR model for 3 more publications from the HDU collection. And as you can see here, the character error rates varies between 6.7 and 9.1%. So we are very encouraged by this result. We think that with addition of a reasonable amount of training data from the HDR collection, we should be able to create a general HDR model for the whole corpus in a reasonably short amount of time. The next step that we plan to take immediately for this project is recreating our ground truth with a specialized transcription alphabet, which was created especially for Ottoman Turkish. And it offers the possibility of creating one-to-one mapping between the two scripts. I believe this is not of much interest to non-specialists, so I will talk about this in more detail tomorrow at the Arabic workshop. Our next goal is, of course, to create a general HDR model for the entire corpus of the Hakkı Targus library, and for that, naturally, we need to expand our training data significantly. We are also interested in working with the Transkribus team to add a new function or a new button to the interface that will automate the reversing of the transcription text in the application itself. I believe at the moment this is one of the main obstacles that keeps more Ottomanists from experimenting with the platform, and if we can integrate this step into the workflow itself, I'm confident that more Ottomanists will start experimenting with Transkribus. And our long-term goal is being able to apply Transkribus technology to the handwritten Ottoman Turkish documents, which is another beast. But we would like to be able to make the entire collection of the official Ottoman State Archives machine-readable or at least keyword searchable. That alone would be a groundbreaking development in the field of Ottoman studies. So we are very optimistic and excited about what this project has to offer. And as I mentioned at the beginning, any and all feedback on it will be very welcome. Thank you for your attention.
Any questions?
Thank you, that was great. I was wondering, did you also consider doing one step between going to the transcription and identifying, maybe with the Unicode ID, the character?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the special transcription alphabet that I mentioned we plan to use is very much Unicode inspired. Ottoman Turkish alphabet has an additional characters to the original Arabic alphabet to accommodate the Turkish and Persian characters in it. So there is not a Unicode for every single character for Ottoman Turkish alphabet. But the transcription alphabet that we are planning to use is not exactly Unicode, but it's very similar in approach. So we are hoping that that will help us solve the problem.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm, thank you.
Is there another question? Okay. Well, thanks very much, Suphan. That was
Thank you.
fascinating.
Okay.
I'd now like to introduce Erika Kuijpers from the Free University of Amsterdam, who's going to talk about the ScanTent.
So my name is Erika Kuijpers. I'm a historian. I work at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam. And I'm currently carrying out a project in collaboration with a colleague at Leiden University in the Netherlands. And the project is called Chronicling Novelty, New Knowledge in the Netherlands. We are interested in spread of new ideas, novelty, and the acceptance among a more middle class or common people. And we do so by collecting a large corpus of early modern chronicles, handwritten reports on current events in the whole area where Dutch is being written in Belgium and the Netherlands. So in the past year, so Günther asked me to tell you something about the use of the ScanTent. So that's what I'm going to do. In the past year, we have been collecting scans of manuscript chronicles. In many cases, we ask archives to make professional scans for us, but not all the archives and libraries we visited did have facilities to do so. And then we came with our ScanTent and did it ourselves. So that was a great solution. So this is basically digitization project we are carrying out. So first we scan manuscripts, then we do the line segmentation in Transkribus. We have to correct them manually because we have problems with how the line segmentation comes out right now. Start transcribing them on a platform for crowdsourcing, train a model for automatic transcription, and then the crowd again is going to correct the automatically produced text transcriptions. In total, we plan to do about 40,000 pages of handwritten, well, not only handwritten, but chronicles. So, but I'm just going to tell you about scanning right now. So, in 1 year time, me, my colleague, a student assistant, visited about 43 archives and libraries in the Netherlands and Belgium. And I think in about 25 of the cases we made use of the ScanTent. So after this session, I will set it up and you can see how a ScanTent looks like after heavy use. Generally, archivists were happy to receive us and allowed us to use the ScanTent because we usually had to demonstrate that it wouldn't harm the documents, and of course it doesn't, if the documents are not too big at least, and the light is not harmful for old things, so that was okay. This is the archive in Zierikzee, so it's very, very small archives in Zeeland in the Netherlands, and here we are in Hasselt, in the Rijksarchief Hasselt. Is also a small archive. And actually people are quite happy to see this ScanTent. Here we are in the Antwerp archives, and immediately the personnel started tweeting. They spotted the first ScanTent in their archive. Here we are using 2 tents, as you can see. And here we are in the town archive of Ghent, where the personnel was so much interested, everybody was so much interested in how it worked, and they planned to buy a ScanTent for their visitors as they saw us using it. So what you see here is the people from the archive itself, with my colleague Judith Polman. And this is in the library in Tilburg. These are our 2 PhD students who now also doing the last part of the scanning. We're almost done. So, to evaluate the use, of course, it's a great opportunity to make scans that are still of a reasonable quality. If there's no facilities in place, it keeps your you make the images with your telephone, with your smartphone. The smartphone is stable, so that allows for relatively qualitative, good pictures. The light spreads fairly well. And usually there are no real objections by archivists. I must say that libraries are sometimes a bit more hesitant because usually their collections are more precious and they have sometimes very valuable manuscripts, and they're used to treat them as museum objects and also have very high standards for digitization. So sometimes in libraries, we had sometimes more difficulties than in the archives. Some remarks or disclaimers. I can also demonstrate how I set up this thing, and it looks like awful. It's maybe not so user-friendly yet, but maybe I have an outdated model, I don't know. Light can sometimes still be hard to manage, so there's one side is open, so sometimes light comes in, and then other parts of the document will be a bit shadowy. And for us, one of the main problems was that it doesn't really work for big volumes, and sometimes our chronicles are like really big and they don't open really well, and then often also the distance from your camera is not equal all over the pages, and then the DocScan app has difficulty with the focusing. So sometimes, and as you can see, like in big books, you get, sometimes we have unsharpness in the corners and in the sides. And sometimes we had to find other solutions. But the good thing is, once we went in with the ScanTent, the archivists were so happy with us that in the end we were able to do anything we wanted. So you can see here, this is the Rijksarchief in Brugge, in Bruges. We went back for a particularly big book. For the DocScan, it's a great application. It makes picture every time after you turn the page, so it really saves you time. Of course, the quality of the pictures very much depends on the quality of the camera. And as I said, with big books it can be difficult, and also then if the app doesn't automatically focus, it will not take the picture. So you have to be really, really aware of that and always check whether all the pictures have been taken, because it happened many times to us that we had to go back to take 2 or 3 pictures that we missed. I'm basically done. And one of our troubles is big books like this, that the text goes into the fold of the book, and then it's usually better to take 2 pictures from 2 pages and keep your camera a bit like this. Finally, the automatic cropping facility doesn't work for our chronicles. Usually it crops too much. I think you need very neat, straight pages to be able to crop. So I do that manually on a computer when I really see well what I'm doing. So that's it. Thank you.
Have we got any questions? I just want to say one of the things I like about the logo for the ScanTent is it's so like the Scottish flag. So there's a little bit of Scotland which is still going everywhere in Europe at the moment. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yes, I would like to have a question. Are not the users of the ScanTent tempted to really push on the books so that they would be visible, to harm them? So that I could imagine the hesitance of libraries to allow, use ScanTent, because you should not do that.
Yeah, I think I, as a librarian, I would be worried about that. But that's why I always make an appointment with the library or the archivist in advance tell them that we want to use a ScanTent, show them the link to the video about ScanTent, and also discuss whether or not it's safe to do so. And also, you know, sometimes you need to use pillows or things under the books, and yeah, but as a user, I'm very much aware, and I can convince the librarians that I'm aware and that I won't harm the books because I like them just as much as they do. Yeah, but yeah, that's the risk. Yeah.
Any other questions?
What is the price of the ScanTent?
You'll have to ask to because this is.
I don't know.
I got this one to try it out, I think. So it's 200 euros. Yeah, yeah. Do you have the newest version here? Yeah, I think we should demonstrate that. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Erika.
Yeah.
And for our final talk in this session, I'd like to ask to the stage Sergio, Riolo and Andrea Zappulli from the Banco di Napoli talking about their use of Transkribus.
Thank you so much. We are very happy to be here today. It was a long journey yesterday, but I've seen that it's worthwhile. Since we are a little bit late, I'll try to present myself and my colleague the project, and in the second half of my speech, we have brought with us a short video presentation. First of all, what we are not a bank. We are not a bank. It's important because identity is important when you deal with archives. We are not a bank. We are a bank foundation. In Italy, it's a different institution. It's a philanthropic institution, a no-profit institution. But the special thing about this bank foundation is that it's a private institution. It owns very huge bank archives with documents dating back to the 16th century until nowadays that cover almost 80 kilometers 80 kilometers of paper. 4 years ago, the bank foundation, decided to open a storytelling-based museum dedicated to the archives. This is an important point because it was the relationship between the museum and the general publics that pushed us to use Transkribus. The project that we present today is not thought for researchers or scholars, but it is thought as a bridge between a bank archives and general publics. Facing our visitors, our museum guides were usually asked something like that: where is my name in these archives? Where is my surname? So, talking with my colleague Andrea Zappulli, we thought that we could not answer our visitors that to find their names, their surnames, they had to go in the study room to open very big ledgers and so on. The only answer that we could and that we hope to give as soon as possible is type your name on the internet, on our website, and perhaps, if you're lucky, you will find your name. But we had to transcribe. And so I asked Andrea to surf on the web to look for good projects. And just a minute, I want to leave a minute to Andrea to tell you how this research on the web was.
Yes. Hi. No, the research was very easy because when I found Transkribus, I see that Transkribus works. and it's
And it is something that we usually say to our board of directors, that, I mean, it's the complex part of the project, because you have to explain something that it is very easy for you. But the words that Andrea usually uses is, it works.
Yes, because the question usually is, what is the difference between Transkribus and the other prototypal software from university, other university? Or I say, well, Transkribus works. You can see it. You have to be full of enthusiasm, but you have not to be a high informatic level or skilled person. You could use it without big difficulty. We created a workflow with a base of volunteers. We train the volunteers. We have a technician. We have 2 expert researchers, because we have a lot of handwriting hands, and we pick the document among our document that is similar to an index of names and surnames. We started to transcribe. I started to learn Transkribus, and with this little but enthusiastic team, we start a project, the project Pandetta. Pandetta is an archaic Italian word to say index, the index of bank customer, or the index of ancient bank customer. And now we have to show the video about the project. I hope you will enjoy it.
The historical archives of Banco of Naples is one of the most important sources for the Mediterranean history. The archives fill 300 rooms with original bank documents. The documentation is dating back the first part of 16th century and covers 400 years of economic and social history. Despite its economic nature, this kind of documentation is not so boring. Produced by 8 different banks until the creation of the first central bank of southern Italy, the Bank of Two Sicily in 19th century, these papers are filled with detailed description about every single payment carried out in southern Italy for decades and decades. You could know how a masterpiece of Caravaggio has been paid, for example, or you can found the house rent of your great-great-grandfather among the Austrian militia during the Austrian dominion of the kingdom. The key of this documentation lie in the index of customer names, the Pandetta. Potentially, the historical archive of Bank of Naples has more than 70 million of names. Everyone has curiosity about his ancestors, and the Project Pandetta, through Transkribus, aims to create a huge searchable database of names, like an Ellis Island of Baroque Naples of 16th century and beyond.
Rapido belli, cattavi da parlare, tava dici tu i parole, della me non li scordà, tava dici tu i parole, della me non li scordà, tava dici tu i parole, della me non li scordà.
Fabulous, thank you. Have you got any questions on this project? No, if so, well, we can catch up over lunch. We're running a bit late, so we'll move on to the last session. Thank you so much for your... Thank you.